Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Cool Coder. Today I'm looking at LeetCode 20 valid parentheses. So in this problem, we're given a string that contains parenthesis type characters, and we want to determine if the string is valid. So we know that a string is valid if every open bracket is closed by the same type of bracket. So in other words, if we look at this input, this example input string, we'll see that we have an opening parentheses and it is immediately closed by a closing parentheses. So in this example here, we can tell that it's not valid because this is an opening parentheses that's never closed, as well as this is a closing parentheses that was never open, right? So this is not a valid string. Likewise, we can have a string similar to this. So this is also not valid because this opening square bracket is being closed by a parentheses, which is not valid. And then this opening parentheses is being closed by a square bracket, also not valid. So let's figure out how we're going to write this as an algorithm. So let's look at this example here. So in this example, we can just tell by looking at it that it's not valid because this curly brace is being closed by a square bracket, which we know is not correct, it's not valid. So how are we going to put this in an algorithm? Well, so as you can see, we're going to create a map here, which is basically going to map every closing bracket to its corresponding opening bracket, right? So we have a closing parentheses, which maps to a opening parentheses, then a closing curly bracket that is mapped to a opening curly bracket, right? And then same with the square bracket. So what we're going to do is loop through the input string, and whenever we hit a opening bracket, in other words, a character that is not a key in this map, it's not a key in this map, if we come to a character that's not a key in the map, we're going to add it to this stack here, right? So then we're going to, once we add it to the stack, we can move on. So this is not a key in our map, right? So this closing curly brace is the key and the value is the opening. This is not a key, so we're going to add it to our stack. We're at another opening parentheses, which is not a key, so we're going to add it to our stack. And then we're finally at a closing parentheses, which is in our stack. So now that we're here, we see that it's a closing parentheses. So whenever we hit a closing parentheses, what we're going to do is we're going to compare the last value in our stack to the value in the map, right? So the value of this closing parentheses is a opening parentheses here. So we can see that the last character in the stack is the same as the value in the map. So now that we found that out, we can pop this from the stack and we can move on. So now we're good. We're here. So now we see that it's a closing square bracket. So we're going to look at the last value in the stack, which is a curly brace. So we're going to compare it to the value of the current character, right? So the value of this closing square bracket is this opening square bracket, and these do not equal each other, right? So right now we can end the algorithm and just return false because this is an invalid string. So let's say it's correct, so it's going to be a valid string. So let's say this is, so now we're going to look at the last character in the stack, and it is equal to the value in the map. So we're going to pop this value off and then continue. So now we're here, and then we're going to check the last value in the stack, compare it to the value in our map of our current character, and if it's the same, then we're going to pop it off, which it is, so we can pop this off. And at the very end, we're going to return if stack is empty, right? So if the stack is empty, if it's empty, that means it's a valid string. If not, if there's still a opening parentheses, so let's say we had an extra opening parentheses, then this will not be empty and it will return false. If it is valid and there was no extra opening parentheses, then our current stack is empty, so it will return true. And that's pretty much it. So the time complexity to solve it, it is going to be a linear time complexity because we're running through the input string. We're looking at the entire length of the string. And then for the memory is also going to be O of n because we are creating a stack which could potentially have every single character in the input string, right? So if every single one is an opening character, then then the stack will be the same exact size as the input string, right? So memory will be O of n. And that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and code this up. All right, so let's get started. So remember, we're going to have a map of the corresponding of the closing bracket, which will correspond to the opening bracket, right? So if we have a closing curly brace, we want to map it to the opening curly brace, right? So let's go ahead and create that. And then we also need our stack. And then we're going to go ahead and loop through the input string. And so now we're going to check if the current character is a key in the map. Remember, so basically if it's a closing bracket. Okay, so if the current character is a closing bracket, then what we want to do is check the last value in the stack and compare it to the value in the map, right? So if the current character is a closing parentheses, then we want to check the stack, right? We want to check the stack if the last value is the same as the value in the map, right? So in order to do that, we're going to say if stack of -1, which is just to get the last value in the stack, is the same as my map.get or my map of C, right? So again, if C is a closing parentheses, then my map of C is this opening parentheses, and the last value in the stack is also an opening parentheses. So if this is true, then we want to pop from the stack. Right, and also, so if we're going to pop from the stack, we need to make sure that stack exists, otherwise we will run into errors. So we're going to check if stack exists before we pop. And then if the character is not a key in the map, then it's going to be a opening parentheses. So that means we're going to add it to our stack. And that's pretty much it. So after this, we'll break out of the loop, and then we're going to return if the stack is the same as an empty array. So remember, if this is not true, then there's still values in the stack. So this will be false, right? We want stack to be empty for it to be valid. Also, before we move out of this if, so remember, this is saying if the last value in the stack is the same as the corresponding opening bracket, then we're going to pop. But if it's not, so if this is a parentheses, if this is an opening parentheses, right, and we're currently on a closing square bracket, then we know that this isn't a valid string. So if this isn't true, then we can just return false here. And this should be it. Let's go ahead and run this and make sure it works. Oh, forgot to remove that. And there we go. It works. So I hope you all enjoyed watching this. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you on the next one.